Good afternoon, everyone. As we await Judge Barry Williams' verdict in the trial of Officer Edward Nero, we are well advised to respect the judge's decision, whatever our personal reaction might be. This trial and the other trials of the Baltimore City police officers that will follow are our law's response to the death of a human being, our neighbor and our fellow citizen, Freddie Gray, while in police custody. We have to understand that the people of Baltimore and people throughout the nation call for justice. Our state's attorney, Marilyn Mosby, and I said this before she even decided to proceed with this matter, that is, bring charges, that she is a woman who I have known for years. I believe in her integrity. I certainly believe in her competence. And just as important, I believe in her fairness. And I said at that time that whatever her decision might be, and I had no clue of what it would be, that I could live with it because I knew she would use her best judgment. And so we have a case here where if people were to call out for justice as they have, one would have to conclude that justice, the wheels of justice, are indeed turning. Let me just review what has happened as a former criminal lawyer and one who's pretty much familiar with the process, although it's changed in 20 years since I've been in Congress. Let's go over what happened here. First of all, the state's attorney reviewed the investigation of the police department. As you know, she conducted her own investigation, working with the sheriff's office and looking at what she discovered through her own investigation and that of the police department. She filed charges with the district court. She well know that was bumped up to the circuit court where a grand jury heard the testimony and then returned the indictments. Now, it's interesting that this case, unlike many criminal cases, certain issues with regard to the case went all the way up to our highest court, the Court of Appeals. And it is also interesting, if you're talking about the wheels of justice turning, that Judge Barry Williams ruled that the case should remain in Baltimore. And that was a major decision. Again, the citizens of Baltimore having the opportunity to make the decision. But as you know, one in these cases have a right to either trial by jury or by a judge. In this case, Officer Nero exercised his absolute right to have a trial by judge. And so Judge Williams heard all the evidence, and he alone will make a final decision, and he has said that he will announce that decision on Monday at 10:30. And so then let's look at Judge Williams, because I guess when people think about the trial, they say, well, one person is going to make a decision. What about Judge Barry Williams? I have known Barry Williams for at least 20 years. If I recall correctly, I was one of the people who recommended him for a position on the circuit court. He has earned a reputation as a very fair and a very tough-minded judge, and he runs a very strict court. And that's the kind of judge you want in a case like this, because certainly you are concerned about various motions being overturned, case being overturned. So you want somebody who runs a strict court. And again, that's all of a part of the system working. So Officer Nero was charged after due deliberation, and Officer Nero has been vigorously and effectively, I might say, represented by the legal counsel of his choosing, and he has very good lawyers. The verdict in Officer Nero's trial will be decided again by a judge, who by all accounts has performed his duty wisely and without partiality. For all these reasons, whatever may be Judge Barry Williams' decision with respect to Officer Nero's role in the death of Mr. Freddie Gray, that verdict will have as much legitimacy as our society and our justice system can provide. I share these observations without regard to what the verdict may be in Officer Nero's trial, and without regard to whether I may come to agree or disagree with that verdict personally. I do so in the certain knowledge that this trial and those that will follow are but steps in a longer journey towards a more just and peaceful community for us all. As personal as the verdict will be for the families of Mr. Freddie Gray, Officer Edward Nero, as emotionally unsatisfying or devastating, the future of our community will not be defined at the moment of the verdict, but in the days and years that will follow. I was very proud of our city's response to the mistrial declared in Officer William Porter's trial. With the eyes of the world on Baltimore, our citizens respected Judge Williams' decision, while those who wanted their voices heard engaged, for the most part, in peaceful protests. We who struggle for greater justice in our society must be prepared to do justice as well. Let me say that again. We who struggle for greater justice in our society must be prepared to do justice as well. We must be just in the throes of anger or in the depths of despair. We must be just whether we disagree or agree with a jury's verdict in a single criminal trial. And I will remind the citizens of our region and the citizens of the nation that the citizens of Baltimore asked for justice, and this is the justice system working its way through. It is we who have the ultimate responsibility to act wisely. It is we who have the power and the responsibility to define our own destiny. We faced this test in December, and we passed. On Monday, we will indeed face it one more time. And so, persons from all across the country have rallied to our side with love, money, projects, resources, and opportunities for our youth and our average citizens. And yet, we must remain vigilant to our moral code of peace, no matter what the verdict. I join with the mothers, the fathers, children, citizens, and families of Baltimore, asking for not only peace, but respect for the rule of law. While it is not perfect, we are not a perfect people. Our future and those of our children awaits justice, no matter the answer we receive on Monday. With that, I'll take a few questions.
Congressman, how do you feel about how the cases have progressed since then? Some people were disappointed when the Court of Appeals stepped in, and obviously this has prolonged the trials longer than originally scheduled.
You know, the wheels of justice, they say, move slowly. But in the fact here, justice is at least moving. I think a lot of times the public can get quite impatient because they want to see things move a little faster. But here we have to keep in mind, we have an officer whose life and livelihood has already been impacted substantially. And with a verdict, he could lose that opportunity to be a police officer and earn a living. And certainly he could find himself sitting in a prison. So you have that on the one hand. On the other hand, you have a community that still grieves to this day about a young man who died in police custody. So again, I think the ACLU did a study where they said that in these police-involved shootings with unarmed folks and where they die, only a very, very, very few are there ever even any charges filed. So again, the process is moving. We have those kinds of decisions that you're talking about are very important decisions to the defendant, but it's important for another reason. One of the things that I think we have to always keep in mind, and I learned this as a trial lawyer, people want to be treated fairly. They want to know at the end of the day that the process worked the way it was supposed to work and that it was fair. And sometimes that process has to have something like the Court of Special Appeals or the Court of Appeals looking over the trial judge's decisions. In this case, that's actually a good thing because no one can say that this was just a decision that was just made in one place when there were issues that is in one court, but it was taken to higher court. So I'm perfectly satisfied that the process has gone on as it is, and I trust the judge, and I trust the decision that will come out, no matter what it is.
Congressman, this case has highlighted a lot of issues, including the issue of seatbelts in these transport vans. A lot of jurisdictions in Maryland also do not have seatbelts. Do you think they belong in these vans, or do you think they're too much of a safety risk?
I would like to see seatbelts in the vans. As you know, Baltimore County has said that they are not going to have seatbelts in their vans, and apparently they have some kind of straps that you can hold on to. The problem is, as I understand it, is the safety of the officer trying to strap somebody in, worrying about their gun being taken away from him and doing some harm. I think there ought to be a way that we can solve that problem. Apparently the Baltimore City Police have come up with a solution because they put them in their vans, and I would hope that we would have seatbelts in all these vans. Again, when we're riding in a car, they say you ought to have a seatbelt on. And you've got padding all around you. In these vans, a lot of times all you have is metal. So if you go back and forth, you fall, then you are placed in, I think, a pretty dangerous situation. There should be some kind of procedure, and that's another thing. I'm not going to comment on the trial, but I think it's clear from what we've read that we've got to be, we have to learn from this. We have to really learn from this incident. The idea that maybe officers were not trained in something that they should have been trained in. I think that came out in the evidence. So, but hopefully we'll learn. Yes.
Do you think that the police department and others are learning though? At this point, you say we have to learn, but are they not making changes? I mean, has Baltimore City not made changes?
I think Baltimore City. I'm not up to date on every little thing they've done, but I think the police commissioner is moving in the right direction. I think he is, and I think he's learned, and I think he's moving forward. Keep in mind that, Barry, that we still have pending federal investigations with regard to patterns of practice, which is something that I asked for, and I think a lot will come out of that investigation as to things we need to be doing. I mean, through the entire system, not just on the rest. I'll take about 2 more questions.
Congressman, have you spoken with community leaders, and have you gotten an indication that there's going to be a strong reaction to this verdict?
No, I have not. You know, it's one thing to be reactive, it's another thing to be proactive. I believe in trying to talk to people before things happen, and try to, and part of my duties as one who lived in the inner city, as one who lived generally in the block that Freddie Gray lived in and died in, and as a lawyer and as a leader, to educate my constituency and to remind them that they call for justice. And as a lawyer, I think I'm in a kind of unique position, unlike some leaders, to know the process and know that this is the process, and it is not a perfect process, but I think it's one of the best ones in the world. And so to educate people and remind them, you asked for justice. We went through, State Attorney did everything she was supposed to do. The matter is still in the Baltimore City court system. That then some people might be confused and say, well, wait a minute. I thought it was going to be a jury, and it was a judge. Being able to explain to them that he has Officer Nero and the other 6 officers have an absolute right to have a judge only decide their case. That's part of my job. So therefore, I wanted to be ahead of it instead of behind it. At least when people think about the verdict, whatever it might be, I want them to say, you know what, this is how justice works. And let me tell you something. If I did not do this, I would consider it legislative and political leadership malpractice. Anything else? Thank you all very much. I really appreciate you all showing up.
Thank you, Congressman.
We even got CNN here today. Wow. That's big. I feel they only hung out in D.C. Amen. All righty. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Very good thing, Mason.